Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the November 2025. I can't believe it's November already. Outdoor Ethics and Conservation Roundtable. Glad to have everybody here. It's wonderful to see a lot of familiar faces and some new faces as well. Love doing that. So tonight we're going to follow our typical agenda here. After our opening, we'll have a safety moment. Following the safety night moment, we're going to talk about two areas that Leave No Trace is starting to focus on, and we never really looked at that closely before: light and noise. So we're going to look at those from a Leave No Trace perspective. We'll have some announcements, and then we'll close up. And for the people who want to hang around, we'll have some open discussion afterwards. So with that, this being a Scout meeting, could we please start with the Pledge of Allegiance? If you would all be on mute. Scout sign. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. To Scout oath. On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country and to obey the Scout law, to help other people at all times, to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. Scout law. A Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, reverent. The Outdoor Code. As an American, I will do my best to be clean in my outdoor manners, to be careful with fire, to be considerate in the outdoors, and be conservation minded. Thank you, everybody. And now we will have our safety moment. And Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. So our safety moment tonight is about driving at night and specifically about being aware of deer. So this being autumn, this is mating season for deer. The deer are especially active. And it's, as always, they're active at the dawn and the dusk, but especially now at this time of the year. So it's really, really important to pay extra attention as you're driving down the road if you have to end up driving at night. So if you're driving through habitat that you know is populated by deer, we just want to go through a couple of precautions for that. Can you go ahead and go to the next slide? So the first one, probably the best one, is slow down. If you're driving at night, you're driving through places where you know there's lots of deer, especially between 6 and 9 p.m. Just go a little bit slower and be more alert as you drive through to make sure that you're noticing things off the side of the road. So especially if you do see animals on the side of the road, if you look ahead and you can see, definitely slow down. A lot doesn't matter what people behind you are doing. Slow down, give them a break, because there's nothing worse than totaling your car, hitting a deer, and killing the animal, right? Now, it's not always predictable when deer are going to run across the road. So if you do have to suddenly stop for a deer, it's best to brake instead of swerving, especially if like conditions are less than optimal. If it's snowing or raining or things like that, that can make the road surface slippery, and you can end up making the situation a lot worse by sliding into the gutter or possibly colliding with another car coming down the other side. So it's always best to brake and not try and swerve from one side to the other. Now, deer don't typically wander around by themselves. Like it says over here, assume they have friends. So if one deer happens to run across the road, don't assume that you're all good and you can just go speeding by. Slow down anyways, because it's very likely that there may be a few more following that deer. They tend to congregate in large groups. The next one, it says don't rely on deer whistles. Honestly, I have never heard of a deer whistle in my entire life. This is the first time I've seen this, but so but apparently they're not really proven to be effective in any way. I'm going to have to look that up. I want to know what a deer whistle is because I've never heard of one. But don't rely on deer whistles. Rely on your your vision and your reflexes, and do your best to give yourself extra time by slowing down and braking and whatnot. And then, of course, this last one goes without saying: buckle up. Accidents do happen, even if you do the very best that you can to avoid hitting a deer or any other animal for that matter. Sometimes it does happen. Sometimes you just don't have enough time to react. And so the smartest thing that you can do, as always in driving a car, is buckle up. Wear your safety belt for any unseen or unpredicted activities. I believe Gary is holding up a picture of a deer whistle. Interesting. Interesting. I'm going to check it out. Thank you. Okay. Um, so, if an accident happens and you're buckled up, it's going to be far less worse than it would be if you weren't buckled, just as it would be in any other situation, any other kind of accident. All right. Paul, I believe that's all.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll move into our main topic for the night. And we're going to start with uh, Leave No Trace After Dark. We're going to talk about Leave No Trace principles in the dark. So, what is the dark? It's usually, I don't know, for a lot of adult leaders, that's the time when you try and get the kids quiet so you can finally relax. But there's a lot more to it, and there's a lot of nature that can be experienced when it's nighttime. The seeing the sunsets, seeing the feeling in the woods. When I worked at scout camp, and I always treasured my chances to walk in the woods in the evening. I just thought that was the best. You could hear all the wildlife. Um, Not having your vision really brings out your other senses. You hear things. What you see seems even more interesting. I don't know how to say it. And you smell things. It's just a wonderful experience. And I think a lot of times we miss out on that because when we go outdoors, we try to bring the indoors with us. Bright lights and noise and lots of activity. And we kind of chase all that nature that's happening at night away. So what can we do that we can go and savor and enjoy, the gift of nature at night? So start off with just a few considerations. So at night, obviously, we do want to be safe, and we want to be, number one is keep the people safe, and then we want to keep nature natural as much as we can. So some things to think about in safety is you're going to trip over things if you can't see them. So think about the things that are out and use reflective tape or gear with visible colors at night, or more visible, I should say, I guess. Things that are reflective and show up in a little bit of light so you don't have to use your flashlights. You don't have to have big lanterns going all the time. Think about the light that you use. You want to keep the intensity in line with what you need. You're not trying to recreate your living room at home. You're not trying to have it be bright like at home. You're trying to be out in nature, but you need light to function. So you want to have enough light to do what you need to do, but no more than that. When you use your light, pick a light with a longer wavelength. So you want a red light, you want an amber light, get the warmer colors of light. There's a reason for that because many animals, their vision works differently than humans. We have a very high sense of color with cones as well as the rods in our eyes. Remember the biology class we all took to way back there? And it turns out the rods are more sensitive to the shorter wavelengths, the blue lights. So the bright blue lights and the bluer scale of the lights are much brighter to many animals than are the yellow, amber, red lights that we as people have more cones so we can see that. So there's a little bit of biology and part of why we want to use the warmer colors of lights. think about where the light is pointed. You don't want to put a light that just shines all over the place. You want that light focused on what your task is. You want to keep the light pointed down and pointed only in the direction where you want to use it. So, um, another thought, I mean, and this is kind of an extension on the direction of light, is you want to refrain from using light that you don't need. Light for the sake of having light is not helpful. You don't want to go out with, your choice is, okay, I've got this super bright lantern or I've got nothing. That's not what you want to do when you go out. You want to have the right light for the job. And yes, cell phones are great emergency flashlights, but they are not what you want to count on an outdoor trip. Um, don't even do it. So if you look at uh, what we see when we go outside, there's a rating scale for the different skies you can see. And as you move towards the lower numbers, as you move towards the right on this chart, what you do with light becomes more and more critical to your experience because it's going to extra light's going to just take away from your ability to see the sky and see what's going on up there. Um, and you might not realize it, but just going from, something maybe an 8 to a 6 doesn't seem like a whole lot on this, but it's huge when you're outdoors. The number of stars you can see just is incredibly different just moving from those eyes. So, the United States is very, very light polluted. So if you look at the warm colors there and going to white, those are the super, super bright spots. Um,
Paul,
and
if you actually click on that link there, I don't know if you want to do it right now, you can actually zoom in and to specific places and you can see that rating
yeah,
scale that you just looked at. It's the shades on here are that rating scale. So you can see what your local visibility is right where you live in that.
so okay. Well, not having played with it before right now, I'm not going to do that live for the first time. But well, we need to include this link and share that with everybody so that you can do that for yourself there and take a look at it. Um, okay. So hiking at night, that's something that not many of us think about doing. But it can be a really beautiful time at night. And I'll tell you from a land ethic point of view, it's a really great way to connect with nature because it makes you aware of things that you just are not aware of uh, during the day. It's just beautiful. If you're in a dark area, you look up and see the Milky Way and the stars, and with some luck, you'll see some shooting star, some meteors going by. It's wonderful. In the summertime, it's great to be out there when it's not so stinking hot. It's just a great, great thing to do. Now, of course, you want to do that, but once again, we want to be safe. And so now, guess what we're talking about? We're talking about plan ahead and prepare. So let's think about some things. Okay, how many people have set up their tents at night? Had their youth set up their tents at night? Did that go as well as during the day? Were there some interesting experiences? Were there stray pieces you found in the morning and you wondered where they came from? So all these things will happen. So you want to plan ahead so you can set up your camp and have it set up and safe for night before the night comes. Remember I talked about reflective tapes and things like that. Think about where the lights are and get the lights you need, but no more. Um, as always, of course, before you do any hike, you're going to let people know where you're going, what you're doing, when you plan to be back. Um, and don't count on the moon because we were talking earlier before this started. Could people see the aurora? And some people could, and some people might have, except it was cloudy. So if it's cloudy, the moon's not going to help you as much as it would if it's a bright day. So you need to check the weather and think about that. And maybe if it's going to be too dark, you need to rethink and do plan B. So you've got a plan B ready, right? So think about that before you head out. As it gets darker, it tends to get cooler, which is a good thing in the summer. But in the shoulder seasons, it can be very much a problem because it's warm at day, but it's cold at night. So be sure that you're dressed comfortably for the times you're going to be out there, for the daytime to the nighttime. Um, Once again, talked about putting glow in the dark or reflective tape on there. I replaced all the guy lines on my tent with reflective guy lines, and it's one of the best things I've ever done. I just, it has kept me from knocking my tent apart at night so many times. So, and then you also want to think about, are you at the right location to do what it is that you want to do? So you want to think about travel and camp on durable surfaces. And one of the things to remember is at night, things look different. That's part of the point of going out. But you can't just blindly, to use that term probably and advisedly, go out there and think that you can follow a trail the same way you can during the day. You need to think about it. At this time of year here in Virginia, the fresh leaves are down all over, and it's not easy to see the trails all the time. At night, they really will tend to blend in with everything else. So you need to think about that. Summertime, it's a bit easier to see the trails at night, but in the fall, it's not a particularly good way to do. Be sure you, of course, have all the right your map with you. You know how to use the map, and you also have your compass. And if you've got a phone, you've probably got a GPS. Once again, you want to stay in the designated areas. You want to stay on the trails. Just because at night it's night doesn't mean that you're walking off the trail is going to cause any less damage than it would during the day. Um, Also, you want to think about the trail that you're going to be on. You don't want to try a challenging trail at night, most likely. That's not going to be a safe thing to do. Pick a trail that doesn't have a whole lot of trip hazards and such along it. Plan ahead. Dispose of waste. That that's another thing to consider at night. So keep your pack organized. Not only can you find things, you're much less likely to knock something out and not know that you left it. And you don't leave stuff behind. The trash gets knocked out of somebody's pocket because they were digging around in it looking for their pocket knife, whatever, something like that. So keep your pack organized so you know what's where, and that can really help you cut down things getting lost in the dark. Um, so be observant, the trail. So just because you're out at night doesn't mean nature's not going to call. So if you have to go off the trail at night, know how you're going to get back. Have a plan for that. Have somebody on the trail, perhaps with a flashlight turned on, so you can find that light and get back to them while they wait for you. So you need to have a plan for how you're going to deal with personal emergencies or personal urgencies, however you want to call them, while you're on the trail. Uh, just because you're out up late on a hike doesn't mean that before you go to bed you can skip putting your gear into bear canisters, securing your trash in the trash cans. Um, the critters are glad to wait till you go to sleep. So it doesn't change just because you were out late at night. Um, there's a great idea here for a leave what you find kind of activity, a nighttime scavenger hunt. I just love this idea. This is a new one to me as well. And instead of looking for objects, you're not going around picking up objects in the dark. You're looking for things. Can you find, um, can you spot a mammal in the dark? Can you spot a constellation? Can you, I mean, if you're doing with younger scouts, can you find the moon? Can, make things, or cubs, make things appropriate. Um, so once again, you can make a connection. This is a great way to help um, everybody connect with nature and follow, leave what you find as you're doing it. So careful with fire. Okay. So it's nighttime. Fire is good. Fire is an orange light, so it fits in with what we're talking about here, right? But campfire safety is just as important at any time of day. And so you need to know, once again, remember what are the restrictions? What's the, you know, what is the rules for having fires where you at? And you want to follow those wherever you go. You always want to use the existing fire pits. You don't want to set up something new. And so now if you're out on a night hike and you wanted to go out and maybe have a campfire, I don't know, and something and come back. Doesn't change that the campfire needs to be cold out before you leave. Doesn't change that you want to you want to have it in a existing fire ring, not make a new one. None of those things change. So follow all the common sense of be careful with fire. Respect wildlife. So light can have a huge impact on wildlife. Uh, so we all know what happens around the lantern. And when you're at summer camp and you got the lantern on the table or on hanging on, um, what's all around your lantern? Bugs. Insects are flying everywhere. They're doing laps. They're doing whatever. Your lantern basically is just a huge bug trap. So what you're doing is you are um, drawing those insects away from what they normally should be doing, whether that's scavenging for food, mating, whatever their normal activity is. You're keeping them from doing that. You're setting them up as a smorgasbord for a predator to come in and munch away on them. Um, Basically, if you think as an analog, it setting up a light is a lot like thinking about when you set up your camp in between the wildlife and the water source. You're blocking them from it. Your light could be doing the same thing with insects. Migratory birds. Some migratory birds navigate using light. So if there's a big background light, they can't see where the horizon is that they should be heading to. Okay, and they could get lost. Sea turtles. When after a female sea turtle lays her eggs, she goes back to the sparkly water. That's what she's attracted to is the sparkly water. If there are bright lights all around, she can't tell which is the sparkly water. It's just all sparkly stuff. It's all bright stuff. And they can go the wrong way. They might wind up dehydrating. They can wind up on a road, but they will, less likely to wind up back in the water where they belong. Similarly, when the baby turtles are hatched, they won't be able to tell where the water is for the same reasons. So those are things to think about on respect wildlife. Um, Another thing to think about is just as I spoke about insects being drawn to the light, some animals avoid the light. So once again, the light's keeping them from getting to where they need to be. Um, so it can have a big impact for things that you didn't see. So you didn't see that, but you made an impact on it. It can also mess up the day-night cycles for animals. So the day gets extended by the artificial light, and they wound up perhaps being not getting enough sleep or being late to their food source, and somebody else has already gotten to it and eaten it because they were late getting there because they didn't realize it was time because it was too bright. So there are all kinds of impacts you can have on that. This Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission website has some really good information on that, and I would point you to take a look at that on wildlife impacts of light pollution. So I've probably talked ahead on most of the stuff here, but the net of it is insects and birds, amphibians and mammals. I haven't talked a whole lot about amphibians. Actually, there's probably been less science done on amphibians and light pollution than there has on most other classes of animals. But it certainly does have an impact on them. And so I talked about the sea turtles. This is what I always do. I'm sorry, I talk ahead. But once again, there's a good website here on the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission and on sea turtles, and we'll give you the link to that. Be considerate of others. So when you go out and you're not practicing good practices with your lights, chances are you're in an established campsite. There's somebody camped near you, and your lights are going to impact their experience very much. So think about, you're being considerate of others when you manage your light so that other people can enjoy the dark. Um, and and similarly, you don't want to be running around with your flashlight and then blinding people as you go by and stuff like that. Be considerate of others with the light, as they're out and you're out enjoying nature at night. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Matt and let him talk about sound.
All right, thanks. And speaking of sound, Paul, when you shared this, did you share the share audio? Because we're going to have a little bit of an audio experience in a second. I just want to make sure.
Let me fix that.
Okay.
Okay. It's fixed.
Awesome. Okay. I've got this little quote right here. Oftentimes I've seen this attributed to Shakespeare. It's not actually really from Shakespeare. I couldn't find the actual source of this quote, but the earth has music for those who will listen. And if you think about your outdoor experiences, um, maybe the idea of hearing natural sounds doesn't come onto our radar very often. Maybe for some of you it does, but it's actually a very, very important part of the outdoor experience. Paul, will you go ahead and change the slide? We're going to answer a couple of questions here tonight. And much of the stuff that I have on here, this is the reference. So the National Park Service actually has a really great web page that talks specifically about the impacts of light and sound. So like the combination of both of the topics we're talking about tonight. And this reference that you see right there, we'll have to post that in the chat, is the page that goes to and where I had much of this information came from. Also, I did put the light pollution link in the chat, and Mark provided another one as well. So let's go through and let's answer these questions. The first one we need to ask, well, is human-made sound actually a problem? I'm sure we've all been in very quiet places and we've had to, but most of us live in cities or at least in places where there's lots of people around us. Some of us maybe don't. And sometimes the human-made ambient noise around us doesn't really register because we're so used to hearing it all the time. So we're going to answer that question as well. What effects does it have on nature? So like we looked at how light affects different creatures in the wild. We'll look at the same thing with sound. And then we'll talk about what are some things that we have that are sources of those sounds and how we can minimize our impact on nature. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So here's where we're going to answer that question. Is human noise actually a problem? Now, what I have here is I have created an aural experience for us. This is made up of sounds that I have actually recorded myself out on various outings, some as recently as this past Saturday. So these are places as varied as Zion National Park, Lake Powell, Yellowstone, the middle of nowhere, West Desert, Utah, and the high Uintas. So places here that I've been to frequently in the West. Now, while we listen to it, you're going to hear both natural sounds. You're going to hear man-made sounds as well. This is about 4 minutes long. And as we're going through, what I want you to do is in the chat, if you would type in a man-made sound that draws your attention away from the natural sounds around you. You can also type in natural sounds that you hear as well. So Paul, would you go ahead and click the little audio button there in the corner? There we go. So go ahead and put in the chat things that you hear. And I apologize, you will hear me fumbling with the equipment from time to time. These are very raw recordings. All right, there we go. So we got a lot of stuff in the chat. I know the box is in front of everything right here. What were some of the most distracting sounds that you heard in that? Anyone? You can unmute yourselves. You can also add to the chat if you want. But was anyone distracted heavily by any of the human-made sounds?
The knocking sound, which someone suggested was gunfire.
You are actually correct. It was gunfire. So in Utah, if you head into the West Desert, that is something that you are going to run into no matter where you are. And so that was a recording that I took last Saturday out on top of a peak. And so you could hear it quite a bit over there. Um, so yes, gunfire, ATV noises, all those kind of things. There was people speaking. The speaking voices, that was from Yellowstone. I was trying to take an audio recording of a hydrothermal feature there, and I just couldn't do it because there were so many people. But I want to point out a couple of specific things. In the United States, it is almost impossible now to escape the sound of airplanes being under a flight path. There are very, very few places. In fact, they've done some studies about this. Wilderness areas included, very remote areas. There are very, very few places left, especially in the lower 48, where you can have a completely quiet experience free of some kind of airplane flying over you. And maybe we don't think about that very much because it's become such a part of the human experience, right? When you're outdoors, you can think, oh, it's absolutely silent, it's so quiet. And yet at the same time, like, you probably hear a dozen or so jets fly over you every single day without even thinking about it. So human noise, some of it we can't help, some of it we can, but it actually is a very, very pertinent problem to the day and age that we live in. So right here, this is a decibel graph. Decibels are how we measure amplitude or the volume of a sound. Now, the most comfortable, the safe noises are down here below 40 decibels. Now, moderate to loudish is not too bad. But as you get higher than about 85 decibels, any kind of prolonged exposure to that can actually result in hearing damage and hearing loss. Now, the other night, I was up hiking on a mountain that I have right here in Salt Lake. It's just barely, it's kind of in the middle of the Salt Lake area, but it's a quieter kind of natural area. And it's up above, it's within visual range of like I-15. It's under the flight path of the Salt Lake Airport and everything. And I happen to have a sound meter on my phone. And so I pulled it out to just see how loud the ambient noise was. I was getting readings in the 70 to 80 range with no one around. I was there by myself, but 70 to 80 decibels, vacuum cleaner, traffic, noisy restaurant in the loud category here up on top of this mountain. And that's just the ambient sound around us. Now, for many of us, we live in urban areas. And again, this just kind of fades into the background for us because we're so used to hearing a sea of human sound. And so what we don't realize is, for many of us, it's hard to escape this. I don't know if anyone's ever been to a place that's been absolutely completely silent. It is at first, it's almost a shocking experience. I have been to a few places where I haven't heard any sound at all. And even in nature has ambient sounds as well. It's not just humans that produce noise. Nature also produces it. Bird calls, wind in the trees, waterfalls, those kind of things produce sound. But they're on a different kind of scale than the human scale. So it was surprising to me to be in a place that I think is very quiet, but to see that it was constantly above 70 decibels. And as I listened closely, yeah, I could hear the traffic down on I-15. I could hear the airplanes flying over me. I could hear street noise from the neighborhood surrounding this place. And it was like, yeah, okay, actually, there's a lot of sound in this place. So this right here is kind of like the light pollution map. This is, though, a sound pollution map. And so the brighter the color, the more decibels or the bigger the sound pressure level. That's what SPL is. So the louder it is, the brighter it is. And as you can see in the Midwest and along many places in the East Coast and the Northeast, you're going to have a hard time getting away from this sound. Like here in the Chicago area, look at just how bright it is. There's no escape until, even if you get out in these rural areas. You can also tell that one of the main sources of sound pollution is transportation corridors.
Hey,
You
Matt,
can
we're not
literally,
seeing that.
oh,
We're
you're
not
not?
seeing
Okay.
it.
Oh, sorry. I will try sharing that again. There we go. How about now? Are you seeing it now?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, thank you. Let me know if that's ever a problem. So, I'm zoomed in on Chicago area, but you can see the roads are outlined with the higher decibels and sound pressure levels. You can literally see the transportation network of the United States because of the sound that's present there. Let's look at New York City. Yeah, New York is huge. You'd have to go up here. You can see the cooler colors are much more quiet spaces, and this is accounting for human-made ambient noise. So up in the Adirondacks, you'd be in pretty good shape. Or let's say the Boundary Waters area, or look at Wyoming, where there's nothing in the middle of Wyoming, or Nevada, or even southern Utah down there. These are places that are just open sagebrush flats with no nearby roads or towns or anything. It's going to have a much quieter human ambient noise level. Now, let me show you another one. I mentioned there are, hopefully you can all see this still. Let me know if you can't. This is the natural sound level of these places. And I want to ask an interesting question here. Sorry, oops, I don't want that to be so big. There we go. So the greener colors are the louder natural sounds. The brown colors are the quieter natural sounds. So why do you think it is that over here in the east and down around the Mississippi River and southern Florida is much more naturally loud than, again, Nevada or Wyoming? Why do you think that might be? All right, so Carol says water makes a lot of noise. You're right. You're right. Think about what's present in these desert areas, or what's present in these eastern areas that aren't present in the desert area, and water is one of them. So you can see here, instead of transportation corridors, we have river corridors instead that are outlined by the quieter sounds. And that's because water makes natural sound as it rushes over, and riparian areas, Lillian says riparian areas are much more biodiverse. So yes, we're going to have a much higher density of animal life there. So birds and other things. And then here's the big one, trees and foliage. So natural sounds tend to be much more soothing to people. There's nothing I love more than walking through a grove of golden aspens in the fall and hearing the soft rustle of the wind through the leaves. Well, over here in the east, where you have a lot more tree cover, you're going to have a lot more natural sound from that tree cover, from the wind going through that. And with more forests and more water comes more biodiversity, comes more bird species, more species of mammals, more species of everything in the east. And so you're naturally going to have a lot more sound over there. Whereas in a place like, say, like Death Valley, no trees, no water. It's basically just you, silence, and the sand. So you're going to have a much more natural, or naturally quiet space than you would have in these other places. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to the slideshow. And okay, so human noise can have a big issue, or can be very distracting if you actually notice it. So let's talk about what effect our noise has on nature, specifically on wildlife. So if you think of the ways that animals use sound, if we make enough sound that it interferes with this, it can really throw off some of these behaviors of animals. So animals, just like we do, we're currently communicating with sound, but animals use sound for communication as well. For parents communicating with their offspring, for mating calls, for those kind of things. Establishing territories is an important thing that the animals use. Finding habitat, courting and mating, raising families. There are, for example, like penguins have, and other creatures have specific calls that the young chicks recognize their mother's call out of everything else, all of the other noises that are going on. They are able to recognize the specific frequencies that their parent calls. And it's not just penguins, it's other creatures as well. Seals have the same kind of thing. And other forest creatures are able to identify the specific frequencies, especially birds have specific calls that they use for all of these things. Birdsong is probably the most commonly noticed natural sound, but we're finding that in order for birds to hear each other, they're oftentimes altering their behaviors. So birds, they found, have sometimes shifted their calls. They've adapted to human ambient noise, but they shifted their calls to different frequency spectrums, mostly higher, so that they can pierce through and cut through the higher level of ambient noise that is present in the world now. And if they don't do that, they can't compete. They've also sometimes shifted to, instead of calling during the day, using the night to have voice their calls, because it is naturally quieter when humans are more asleep. So we're seeing animals shift their patterns around to accommodate the noise that's around. But it also creates problems. Things like in the ocean, with vessels that cross the ocean, creating these low frequencies that interfere with whale calls. And whales are having a hard time finding mates or get confused about what's going on, because these frequencies are interfering with the natural calls of the whales. So we are having an effect on the world around us. The noise is piling up a great deal. So as we listened to in that audio experience, we saw a lot of human-made noise that sometimes we just kind of tune out because we're so used to it. Cars, ATVs, snowmobiles, boats, planes, transportation corridors of all kinds. We're used to hearing those noises around us. And so we don't think about the impact that noise can have on nature, on wildlife, and on the experience of other people, which is what we're going to talk about in just a second. Now, some of it, like I said, we can't help. We're not going to call up the FFA or FA, not the FFA, the Future Farmers of America, the FAA, and say, hey, halt all air traffic, and no, everyone's just going to stop taking planes everywhere. But we have to notice that, yeah, that noise does actually have an impact. Operating tools and equipment. So when we go camping, when we go into the outdoors, think about what are the things that we need to operate, or do we need that kind of operation? I'm going to ask you another question in a second, and you might want to think about some of these sources. Commercial and industrial noise, that can be a thing depending on where you go. And then, of course, things like military operations, and then other stuff, just music, talking, yelling, etc. Those are things that we can create noise with in the outdoors. So this is the next question that I wanted to ask. Feel free to unmute yourself and make a comment, or put it in the chat. Can you think of any specific experiences that you've had in the outdoors where noise, human-made noise, has directly affected your enjoyment of that experience? While you're putting stuff in the chat, I'll mention one that I had at Yellowstone. I was camping with my family. This was 2 years ago. We were camping at Yellowstone, and it was at night, and someone pulled into a campsite just a couple down from us, and they got there at about 11 p.m. And instead of just setting up camp and going to bed and whatnot, they got out, they strung up lights, they started a bonfire, and while they were setting up and everything, they were talking really loud, and they opened up all their car doors and blasted music for hours. probably until about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And I was about ready to get up and go talk to them about it. Finally, somebody yelled from another campsite. They're just like, "Shut up!" Nobody was happy about it. But that kind of ruined that night for my family because nobody got any sleep. Everyone was pretty grumpy because of the inconsideration of that person. Let's see. Campground karaoke, yes, and that, like I was saying here, that was one that sort of kind of one that we had going on. Let's see. A lot of cavers will turn off lights and ask for a few moments of silence. It's amazing how disorienting this is to so many people. Yes, you are correct. And as I was saying earlier, I've had a couple of experiences where I've been in a place that has been truly, truly quiet, and it's shocking because you start to hear your own pulse and you're like, oh, where's the sound? It was in one of those desert areas that I showed you. Let's see, from the summit of Camel's Hump on Vermont's Long Trail, I could hear I-89 in the valley, half a day's hike away. Yeah, exactly. Let's see, when we're camping in the parks, folks can be extremely inconsiderate. You're right. Power generators running at a summer camp. Or I can almost guarantee that everyone here has been in a campground where someone has run a power generator all through the night, right? Most of our parks enforce quiet hours from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Even the generators are not allowed to run during that time. You're right. Some are not allowed to do that. Not everybody follows that, though. But those are, again, that's a regulation to be aware of. Can you run a generator, or do you need a generator, or are you in a place where a generator might not be the best thing to use? Okay, CPAP machines. And there's another one that, like, you can't really help. People need the CPAP machines, but it's something to take into consideration. But one way or another, what we're finding here is that universally, every single person's experience has been affected by sound in one way or another. Now, just as with everything else in Leave No Trace, there are probably more appropriate places and times for more noisy experiences, and there are less appropriate places and times for those. So let's take a look at that, minimizing our sound impact with Leave No Trace. I have a few of the select principles where we can kind of maybe connect it to the way that we prepare ourselves or use sound in the outdoors. One thing to think about when you plan ahead and prepare, and this isn't something that probably comes up on many people's radar, is do you actually plan to include the natural soundscape in your experience? Do you include some time to say, okay, let's put away all of the stuff that makes noises. Let's sit on a rock for a few minutes and let's just enjoy the natural ambient sound of nature and let it work on us. Are there ways that we can reduce the noise as we move and we camp? There are things that you can do. Are there things that you can leave home that would not be conducive to a quiet, natural experience? And yes, Pete Lane says the larger the group, the more sound it's going to create. And this is another thing, like if you think about designated wilderness, the group size limits, part of it is because of that. And it's not just like the impact on the ground itself and on the land, but it's on the experience of others as a whole. People go to wilderness areas to get a wilderness experience. And part of that experience is the natural ambient sound. The larger the group is, as with all things, the harder it is to control the sound of your group. All right. Gigi brings up a good point about bears. I'll talk about that in just a second. Okay. So this is another one, and this is increasingly an issue in our day and age, music. Now, I am a professional musician. Music is my life. I love music. But honestly, when I go to the outdoors, unless I'm like in my tent at the end of the day falling asleep, I take a break from music. I don't listen to it. Now, I'm not saying that that has to be for everyone, but I enjoy just hearing the peace and quiet of what nature has to offer. A little part of me died inside when the scout shops started selling the portable speakers, right? Because that was the death of quiet in many places. Not everybody else likes your taste in music. Not everybody else wants to hear your music. So if you must have music, can you encourage your youth to bring earbuds and make it a personal experience as much instead of a public experience? All right, so we had some activities that are emphasized the sound in our outing that were put into the chat. Let's see. Jeff says, as a camp director, you went on night hikes, you listened for owls, you look for scorpions. That's awesome. Can you incorporate sound hikes into your program at camporees or summer camp or whatnot? So think about that as you plan different outings. Okay. Now, what Leave No Trace typically says about this in the Leave What You Find thing is just let nature's sounds prevail. Nature has enough competition with just the noise created by modern industrialized society. It really doesn't need your help. Yes, we need to communicate. Yes, there are certain things we need, but see what you can do to minimize how much you use. All right. So yes, there are of course issues with earbuds, and it's up to you to decide what you're going to do in your unit, whether you're going to allow them or not. But from a Leave No Trace standpoint, it's much more Leave No Trace friendly to have earbuds. If someone has to have the music, earbuds is much better than having the loudspeaker that everybody can hear. But again, it's up to you to say in your planning process, guys, people, let's leave home the music. Let's see what we can experience with natural sound. Okay, now wildlife. Here, let's talk about the bear issue. Let's go through these real quick. But as we looked through earlier, a lot of times wildlife depends on a quiet environment. So time your outings to avoid the sensitive times like mating or when they're raising their young, or places where you know wildlife are active in doing that. So be mindful of the creatures that are in the area where you will be visiting. And if you're out with the intent to look for wildlife, I guarantee you that the quieter your group is, the more wildlife you will see. Just a couple weeks ago, I was out hiking with a friend. It was just me and that friend. It was during hunting season, and all the hunters around us were on their ATVs as they usually do. And every single one of them was asking us, so have you seen any deer? We haven't seen anything all day. Well, we saw like 4 or 5 deer. And it's because it's just simply a fact of the noise of the machine versus we were simply just walking through the woods very quietly. So the deer didn't avoid us because there was nothing, they couldn't hear us coming. So we got to have a better wildlife experience because we were quieter. Now, speaking of wildlife experiences that are quiet and maybe not so good, in bear country, especially in grizzly bear country or places where you know that there are the kind of those large predator animals, the worst thing that you can possibly imagine doing, especially with the grizzly bear, is surprising it on the trail and with no warning. These surprise encounters account for a good portion of the negative bear interactions that people have. And so that's why we put in the chat earlier, we were being silly about bears and whistles, but that's why the whole bear bells thing exists. Whether they're effective or not, it's up to us. But making some noise is probably a wise idea in bear country. Just walking along, whacking your poles together. If you have hiking poles, saying, hey bear, every few feet, or speaking with whoever you're with. It's a good idea to do that. The one and only time I have ever hiked with music playing, I was in the Absaroka Mountains in Wyoming, which is like grizzly bear central. And just as a precaution, I put some music on my cell phone because the last thing I wanted to do was to surprise a bear. That's the one and only time I've done it. So there are appropriate times and appropriate places to be a little bit more noisy than you might be otherwise. And that includes making sure you give those kind of creatures, especially grizzly bears, a little bit of a warning that there's a person there. You kind of actually want to scare them off before you get there. You don't want to surprise them. But in general, the quieter you are, the more you'll be able to experience and enjoy and see wildlife. There's the old joke. So Jeff posts the difference between grizzly scat versus black bear scat is that grizzly scat is full of bear bells and smells like pepper spray, and black bear scat is full of berries and stuff. So, all right, so there's the wildlife component of that. Be mindful of how you interfere with their natural cycles, and try and enjoy what they have to offer. Oh, and I forgot to mention earlier, and I think I had it up there, bats. Bats specifically use echolocation to track their prey. And so bats, with the increase in ambient noise, have had to drastically change their behavior and their hunting practices. And so we need to be extra careful if we're in an area where we know there are a lot of bats present, to not interfere with their natural behaviors. And then, of course, as with all things, we've looked at kind of the biocentric side of respecting wildlife. And then there's the anthropocentric side. Most of us don't go to the outdoors to hear the same sounds that we hear in the middle of the city. Even if we tune them out, we go to experience the natural quiet of nature. And we do that. We have to remember that other people are also there to experience that same thing. So the last thing they want you to probably hear is your campfire songs and conversation and music and whatnot. Now, again, it depends on the place and the time. So consider the expectations of the location you're going to. Are you going to an organized scout camp like the one pictured here? I was the director of this camp for a while. Well, if you are, the expectation there is that, well, you're probably going to have campfires and songs and things like that. Is the place that you're going, like a KOA campground or something like that, where it's kind of expected that it's going to be a little bit more noisy and have some of these kind of things there? Maybe you incorporate some of that stuff there. Or are you going to hike to the middle of the Sierra Nevada in the wilderness? The expectation in a place like that is not that you're going to have those kind of noisy things. People are going to that location probably to get away from it. So remember, there's a time and a place for everything. Think about where you're going, what the expectation of visitors going to that area is, and plan your activities appropriately. Now, the other thing to consider, especially with large groups of youth that we have, is if you go to a place where there are lots of other people, distance yourself appropriately from those other groups if you're able to do so. Just because they're going to make noise, you're going to make noise, it just happens. But if you're far enough away that noise isn't going to carry from campsite to campsite, it helps to make the experience better for everyone. Now, I realize that that's not always possible. So if it's not, try and keep your noise and the things that could disturb your neighbors to a minimum. But if it is possible to move further away, that's a really good solution to helping to mitigate that issue. So I just want to close with this little quote. This is by Wallace Stegner, a great writer. In 1916 or 1960, he wrote a letter to Congress advocating for the passage of the Wilderness Act. And he says, something will have gone out of us as a people if we ever let the remaining wilderness be destroyed, if we permit the last virgin forests to be turned into comic books and plastic cigarette cases, if we drive the few remaining members of the wild species into zoos or to extinction, if we pollute the last clear air and dirty the last clean streams and push our paved roads through the last of the silence, so that never again will Americans be free in their own country from the noise, the exhausts, the stinks of human and automotive waste, and so that never again can we have the chance to see ourselves single, separate, vertical, and individual in the world, part of the environment of trees and rocks and soil, brother to the other animals, part of the natural world, and competent to belong in it. Think about it. We have pushed our paved roads. We have pushed our noise into almost every corner of the place that we inhabit. So let's push back. let's minimize our impact by practicing leave no trace in these important areas. All right, Paul, I'm going to stop sharing and send it back to you.
All right. Are you seeing my screen or?
Yes.
Okay, good. So there it is. All right. It's time for announcements. And thank you very much, Matt. Thank you. As always, I learned so much when you speak. So thank you so much. I'd like to start off with an announcement that I forgot to put a slide in for, so this one's on me. But we are still looking for um, people who would be willing and interested in helping out at the Jamboree with the Conservation Trail and Outdoor Ethics exhibit. So Pastor Scott Johnson's got a great team put together, but there's still more openings. I just posted his email there. And please contact him if you're interested in serving. So um, that's my first announcement there. Next one. Okay, upcoming next year, we've got 4 level 2 courses on the books. And please, I imagine most of the people on the call are level 2, have taken a level 2 course already. But those of you who haven't, take it. You'll love it. And get your friends to come. This is a wonderful experience, and you don't want to miss out, and you don't want your friends to miss out on that. If funding is an issue for you, that you can get some assistance with that from the Dan Howell Scholarship. If you're interested in helping other people to attend, donations to the Dan Howell Scholarship are gratefully accepted as well. So there's a web page for that on the Outdoor Ethics web page and scouting. Okay, scouting for clean waterways is still ongoing. Want to keep people reminded of that. You can sign up for updates. And I wanted to do something different here. I want to give a little bit of a plug for it here. So, this is something for you to take back to your units and your councils and just say, hey, this is why you want to do it. So, I mean, it's a community service project. It is great visibility for scouts. It's great for getting your unit out there as a place that people are interested in, that kids want to join. For your youth, it's a great environmental education. Learn a lot while you're out doing it. It's a great educational opportunity to talk to the youth while you've got them outdoors doing these kinds of projects. You're part of a nationwide project. It gets a lot of activity. You're part of something really big, and it feels good. So that's something you want to do. And of course, I kind of hit this with community service. It's public relations. It's a great way to get scouting out there as a thing in the community. It's alive, and it's where kids want to be and where parents want their kids to be. So that was it for announcements. Next thing is I'm always asking for photos, and I've gotten a few in, and you may have noticed some in here in this presentation. Always looking for more. So please send some. Just have to send 1 or 2. You don't have to send a big library. You can send a big library. I would love that too. Just send it to roundtable at scouting-oec.org. Feedback is equally important to us. It just makes all the difference. I can't tell you how much feedback, but even if it's suggestions for maybe you could do this better or that didn't go so well, I just love that. It means we're out there, people are paying attention. It's a reward to us, and it really helps us make roundtables better for everybody. So please, if you've got any feedback, send us an email at roundtable@scouting-oec.org. All of our recordings are still on the website. So scouting-oec.org/roundtable. So that's easy enough. You can find us there. And now to close things off, my land ethic kind of moment here is this month is the wind, and it's actually from November in the Sand County Almanac. I actually lined the month up with the month I'm talking about it. I don't think I've done that for quite a while. The wind that makes music in November corn is in a hurry. The stalks hum, the loose husks whisk skyward in half playful swirls, and the wind hurries on. So as you're doing this is a chance to go out and think, take your youth out. And this is great for particularly younger youth, and say, okay, how do you know there's wind? How can you tell it, that there's wind right now? And so have them look around and see, oh well, I feel it on my face, or I see this moving, or I see that moving, or I hear it, or all those kinds of things. So it's a way to integrate once again and pay attention to what's out there and get kids to do that. So thank you so much for attending, everybody. We'll see you next month. Our speaker next month will be Dr. Derek Taft from Penn State University. He's a professor at Penn State, but he's also science advisor to Leave No Trace. And he's going to update us on research that's been done in the last 15 years on how can we change behavior in protected areas. So, uh, is science the way to do it? What can we change to make things better? So I think it's going to be a great, very interesting presentation next month, and I look forward to seeing everybody on December 10th.